page 471, you have the sine law, which is on your formula sheet. And notice that in the sine law, an opposite side, which are the smaller letters, always go with the opposite angle. So angle A goes with side A, angle B goes with side B, angle C goes with side C. And you can either choose to put the angles in the numerator or put the sides in the numerator. And we'll see why you would want to do one or the other, depending on what you're solving for. Generally, if you're solving for a side, you like your sides in your numerator because it just makes it easier to solve. If you're solving for an angle, you like your angles in the numerator because it makes it easier to solve. And the strategy for the sine law is we are going to use it whenever you have a triangle that's not a right angle triangle, so maybe something like this. You know three things, and of those three things, you have to know an angle and its opposite side. If you know an angle and its opposite side and one other piece of information, that's sort of the hint that you can use your sine law. And we're going to be doing some questions with that today. Some other important definitions. Do you remember this from grade 9 and 10, an angle of elevation? It's when you look from the horizontal line, an angle of elevation is always looking up. And then there's also an angle of depression, where if you have a horizontal line, the angle of depression is always an angle looking down. So angle of elevation, you take your horizontal line and look up. Angle of depression, take your horizontal line and look down. All right, so let's go to example 1. First of all, look, is it a right triangle? No, there's no 90-degree angle. So we are not allowed to use SOHCAHTOA, not allowed to use a squared plus b squared equals c squared. That can be catastrophic. If you do a question like this and you start off with SOHCAHTOA, you're going to get like 0 out of 3. This is not allowed to be used. So very important to first check, okay, can I use SOHCAHTOA? Can I use a squared plus b squared equals c squared? And if the answer is no, the hint for the sine law, do we know an angle and its opposite side? We do, okay? So we have the 51 degrees and the 7.8. Now, your sine law has A, B's, and C's. And this triangle has H, G, and J. The letters don't matter. The key thing about the sine law, which makes it like, if you try to think about the letters, you actually confuse yourself more. The key thing is that sides always go with opposite angles. That's why the A, angle A, goes with little side A. So here, we have a side and an opposite angle. And it says, can you find the length from G to H? Can you see that G to H is the little letter J? So when using the sine law, what makes things easiest is whatever you want to solve for, in this case J, put that in the numerator of one of your fractions. Because sine law always has a fraction equal another fraction. And angles always go with the side opposite it. So if I put J on the top, I'll have to put sine on the bottom. And what angle is opposite of side J? So here's side J. So here we would have 44. So if you try to use the formula and think, oh, what's A, what's B, what's C, you're going to get yourself confused. If you want to make it simple, you just have to remember that sides always go with opposite angles. So if I want to find side J, well, what's the opposite of that? That'd be sine 44 on the bottom. And then in order to solve something, I need an equation, and this is why it's so important that you had somewhere else a side and its opposite angle. I'm putting the sides on the top, so I'll put 7.8 on the top, and that goes with 51. So this is using the formula, but I'm not really using the letters at all in the formula. I'm just using the idea of the formula, that angles go with opposite sides. And whatever you want to solve for, write that in the numerator first, and everything else will fall into place. Now, if you wanted to get this j by itself, can you see that you would need to multiply this side by sine 44, and this side by sine 44, which would get us the j by itself. And when you multiply, that would go in your numerator. And we have j by itself, so we can go to our calculator. You have the fraction button. It's really nice because you can make it look exactly the same as you had here. So it's 7.8 sine of 44 divided by sine of 55. And I push enter. 6.615. Yes. Did I just, oh, geez. How did that happen? Thank you for noticing. I think I saw 44 and got so excited the numbers were the same, I wrote 55. So let's retype that into our calculator. Luckily, the calculator lets me just highlight that, so I can just write it again quickly. 6.972. I write 3 decimals, then I'm going to do a check. What did they ask me to round to, and what are my units? Because I don't want to lose a half mark for rounding and a half a mark for units. These questions aren't that hard, right? So now I'm going to go and I'm going to write, j is equal to 6.0, rounded to the nearest 10, 7.0 centimeters. Circle that, that's my final answer. I've got my units, I've rounded it correctly. So the idea of the sine law is just always angles and opposite sides. And the letters in the formula say you can always make 2 of them equal together. Pick any side and its opposite angle will equal any other side and its opposite angle. Now the formula has 3 things, which means you can just choose any of the 3 sides and opposite angles, right? Had we known, like, we could have also solved for h, right? Because you know that these angles add up to 180 degrees inside, so we could have found the angle for h, and you could have found side h as well. Okay, circle question number 9. No, sorry, number 3. We'll do one more question together, and then I'll give you some time to try it.